Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are starting in, well, probably the most remote and frigid landscape you can imagine.
We're in the land of mist and snow.
Exactly. The year is 17-something, and we're boarding a ship in St. Petersburg. It's captained by Robert Walton, a hugely ambitious explorer who is dead set on reaching the North Pole.
It's just an incredible backdrop for what turns out to be a complete human catastrophe. And our source material for this deep dive is really unusual. It's a series of layered narratives.
Letters and confessions, mostly.
Right, all found right there in the frozen Arctic. And they detail this just devastating journey.
Okay, let's unpack this. Our mission here is to trace how this boundless ambition, a really deep search for companionship, and, the pursuit of forbidden knowledge led two very different men.
Walton, our captain, and the man he rescues, Victor Frankenstein.
Led them both to the absolute limits of the habitable world. We're really asking, what happens when curiosity just isn't restrained by any kind of moral foresight?
And that question, it really starts with Walton himself. He's writing these letters to his sister, Margaret, and he is just bubbling with increasing confidence in the success of my undertaking.
He talks a big game, he's chasing unexplored regions, he wants dominion over the elements, he doesn't just want to see nature, he wants to conquer it.
But that desire for dominion is matched only by this profound, really gnawing loneliness.
Yeah, he admits his hopes fluctuate because he doesn't have a true friend. And he's so specific about what he wants.
Oh, very specific. Not just any friend. He needs someone with a cultivated as well as of a capacious mind. He wants a peer who can, approve or amend his massive plans.
And it comes from his background, right? He's self-educated and kind of insecure about it.
Exactly. He's craving validation from a mind he sees as an equal. And you can see how he dismisses anyone who doesn't fit that very high bar, even if they're a genuinely good person.
Absolutely. He tells this amazing little story about his lieutenant, a man he hired for his kindliness of heart.
Right. This officer was in love with a young Russian woman, but then he realized she loved someone else, a poor rival.
So what does he do? He gives his entire life savings, his farm, everything to the other guy so they can get married. He even convinces her father to give his blessing.
It's an act of profound generosity. But here's the kicker. Here's Walton's takeaway from that. He says the man is wholly uneducated.
So noble, but not good enough for a real conversation. He's overlooking this incredible moral goodness because he's hunting for an intellectual equal. It perfectly sets the stage for what happens next.
It really does. Which brings us to this pivotal moment. The ship is trapped in ice, and then they see this bizarre sight, a sledge drawn by dogs, but the driver is a being of gigantic stature.
Just speeding north into the mist, and then shortly after they find someone else, a European man, dreadfully emaciated, drifting on a piece of ice.
Victor Frankenstein.
And the irony is just immediate. Walton's found him, his intellectual companion.
But this man he just rescued is chasing the giant figure that just vanished. Victor is cultivated for sure, but Walton notes his eyes show wildness and even madness.
Walton, of course, is totally blind to the warning signs. He just enthusiastically shares all his ambitious dreams.
And Victor's reply, well, it's the perfect opening to his whole cautionary tale. He warns him, he says, "Unhappy man, do you share my madness? Have you drunk also of the intoxicating draught? Hear me, and you will dash the cup from your lips."
It's such a powerful setup. Victor's whole life is basically presented as this dramatic warning, and it starts, surprisingly, in a pretty idyllic place.
Yeah, in Geneva. He describes this wonderful youth. His father was a respected official who married the compassionate Caroline Beaufort after rescuing her from poverty.
And then there's Elizabeth Lavenza, who they adopt. She's presented to Victor as his promised gift, his more-than-sister.
The parents are explicitly trying to create a kind of perfect, happy environment. But even in this little paradise, you can see the fatal contrast.
Right. His friend Henry Clerval and Elizabeth, they loved poetry, chivalry, moral questions. But Victor
was different. He had this driving thirst for knowledge. He didn't care about the goodness of people. He wanted to know the physical causes of things.
And that thirst leads him, at age 13, straight into forbidden territory. He finds a book by the ancient alchemist Cornelius Agrippa.
And he is just hooked.
Yeah.
Reads it with total enthusiasm. And this is, you could argue, the first catastrophic parental failure.
Yeah, what his father does next is so important.
He just dismisses the book as sad trash. but he never explains why. He just laughs at Victor's obsession instead of actually teaching him.
So by just ridiculing it, he doesn't stop Victor's curiosity, he just makes it this exciting secret thing.
Exactly. So Victor dives deeper. Paracelsus, Albertus Magnus. He's looking for the philosopher's stone, the elixir of life, all because his dad didn't take a moment to offer a real modern critique.
So he arrives at university still stuck in this mythical mindset. He's initially insulted by one professor, but then he meets Professor Waldman.
And Waldman is basically the modern-day tempter. He praises the new philosophers who, quote, penetrate into the recesses of nature and acquire almost unlimited powers.
He frames science as this quest for godlike ability. He tells Victor that modern scientists can mimic earthquakes, and Victor just. He takes it literally. He declares he'll achieve more, far more. He's gonna unfold to the world the deepest mysteries of creation.
That's the moment. That's when he decides to become this Promethean figure. He's gonna seize the spark of being, the secret fire of life, and he doesn't care about the moral cost.
He dedicates 2 whole years just to this, obsessing over the human body, the principle of life.
And this isn't clean, sterile work. He's in vaults, charnel houses, surrounded by decay and corruption. The source calls it a frantic impulse.
And we get this really practical detail that explains the creature's eventual size.
Right. Victor realizes that working with the minuteness of the parts of a normal human body is just too slow, too fiddly. So he decides to make the being of a gigantic stature, about 8 feet tall.
It wasn't some grand aesthetic choice, it was a shortcut.
Just a practical solution, which makes the moment of creation even more horrifying.
So on a dreary night of November, he does it. He infuses the spark of life. The dull yellow eye of the creature opens. It breathes.
And the beautiful dream he'd been working on, Jeff, it collapses.
Instantly.
The description is breathless horror and disgust. He doesn't pause. He doesn't try to nurture it or name it. He sees this terrifying, ugly 8-foot thing he's made, and his only reaction is to run. Complete and utter abandonment.
And that decision, that failure to take any responsibility for his own creation, that's the domino that knocks over everything else. The whole tragedy starts right there.
And he falls into this nervous fever, only broken by the arrival of his friend Henry Clerval. But his return to normalcy is shattered almost immediately. He gets a letter.
A letter about his youngest brother, William. He's been murdered, strangled, and the print of the murderer's finger is on his neck.
Victor sees the creature near the scene, and he knows. He knows instantly who did it, but he says nothing. He can't. Who would believe his insane story?
And because of that secrecy, the tragedy just compounds. The family servant, Justine Moritz, she's wrongly accused.
Because the creature planted William's stolen locket, a miniature of Victor's mother, in her dress.
And Victor has to sit there and watch her trial, suffering living torture, knowing that he is, by proxy, the real murderer of both of them.
Yeah, and the critique of the justice system here is just scathing. Justine is threatened with excommunication and hellfire by her priest until she confesses to a lie just to get absolution. She dies for a crime she didn't commit.
But then we get the creature side of the story, and it completely reframes everything. He starts his story with just raw sensory confusion, learning about the world through pain and rejection.
Immediate, violent rejection from every single person he meets. His real education only begins when he finds a place to hide, a little hovel next to the cottage of the de Lacy family.
And he just watches them. The blind old man, his son Felix, his daughter Agatha. He sees their poverty, but also their gentleness and their love for each other.
He gets so desperate for connection that he starts helping them in secret. He chops firewood for them, and they start calling their unknown helper a good spirit wonderful.
And he learns to speak by listening to them teach Felix's lover, Safi. He calls language a godlike science. But the content of those lessons, that's what starts to crush him.
This is where the psychological pain gets really sharp. Felix is teaching Safi history from a book, Volney's Ruins of Empires, and it shows how mankind can be so virtuous and magnificent, yet so vicious and base.
And the creature, who's a really quick study, suddenly understands society. He gets that without money, no friends, no kind of property. He's nothing, a vagabond and a slave.
And his reading list is just a blueprint for his descent into misery.
It really is. He reads The Sorrows of Werther and learns about despair. He reads Plutarch's Lives and starts to admire these great historical figures, which makes him so envious of human community.
But it's Paradise Lost that truly defines him. He reads it as literal history. At first, he thinks he's like Adam newly created, supposed to be beloved by his maker.
But he realizes that's not him at all.
No. He concludes he's better fit for Satan. But then he realizes something even more devastating. Even Satan, driven from heaven, had companions, other fallen angels.
But the creature is completely, utterly alone. He's worse off than the devil because he has no one.
And then he finds Victor's journal, which confirms everything. He reads his own creator's horrified, disgusted words. Satan had his companions, but I am solitary and abhorred.
So in desperation, he makes one last attempt. He introduces himself to the blind DeLacy, hoping that the one sense that can't judge his looks will win him an ally.
But then the rest of the family returns, and their reaction is just visceral horror and consternation. Felix attacks him, drives him away violently.
And that's the moment. That's when any innate goodness he had is just extinguished. He's enraged, and he resolves to find his creator. He admits he murdered William, but only after the little boy screamed monster at him.
And framing Justine, that was just pure calculated vengeance against a world that rejected him.
So when he finally confronts Victor on the mountain, his demand is, when you think about it, agonizingly reasonable.
It is. All he wants is a female companion, someone as hideous as himself. He swears that if Victor complies, they'll leave forever, go to the vast wilds of South America, and live a harmless life. He just wants one person.
Victor agrees, under duress. But he travels to England, then sets up a lab on a remote island in the Orkneys to do the work.
And this is the second, equally fatal abandonment. While he's working on the female creature, he's suddenly gripped by fear. What if they hate each other? What if they have children and create a race of devils?
He lets his fear of a future he can't control destroy the creature's only hope. He tears the female creature apart right in front of him.
The creature's reaction is immediate and terrifying. His despair turns into absolute menace, and he utters that chilling oath, "I will be with you on your wedding night."
What follows is just a tragic chain of death. Victor goes to Ireland, gets accused of murder, and the victim strangled with those same finger marks on the neck.
It's Henry Clerval. The creature has already started making good on his threat, targeting everyone Victor loves.
And Victor returns to Geneva, but he is so blinded by his own hubris. He's getting ready to marry Elizabeth, and he's convinced the creature's threat is about his death. He's carrying pistols to defend himself.
He completely misunderstood the nature of the creature's pain. Vengeance wasn't about killing Victor. It was about making Victor suffer the same devastating solitude that he had.
And on their wedding night, while Victor is frantically searching the house for an attacker, he hears it, Elizabeth's shrill and dreadful scream.
The creature had misled him completely. He targeted what Victor loved most.
The grief kills Victor's father, and Victor, now truly alone, dedicates his life to one thing: hunting the creature across Russia and into the frozen north.
And the creature becomes this twisted, taunting guide. He leaves messages for Victor, goading him on, "My reign is not yet over. Follow me. I seek the everlasting ices of the north."
Which, of course, is where Walton finds him. Walton's crew is demanding they turn back south, and a dying Victor tries to rally them, calls them cowards, but he's too weak. He consents and dies shortly after.
And his last words to Walton are the final desperate plea: avoid ambition.
And then Walton finds the creature in the cabin, weeping over Victor's body. He's full of remorse now that his vengeance is consummated. He says he was forced into it by universal hatred, that it made him a slave of vengeance.
And his final act is maybe the most profound commentary on Victor's failure. He says he's going to travel to the North Pole, build a funeral pyre, and burn himself.
Why?
To make sure his remains can't give light to any curious and unhallowed wretch who would create such another as I have been. He then leaps onto the ice and is lost in the darkness.
So we've witnessed the devastating end of two ambitious voyages: Walton's quest for glory and Victor's catastrophic creation. The key lesson here, it seems, isn't just what happened, but why.
Right. It was ambition without any sense of immediate, profound responsibility. And it led to the extinction of everyone Victor loved, all of it fueled by the creature's pain and loneliness.
It all connects back to those initial failures we talked about. Victor's father failing to explain the danger, Victor failing to mentor his own creation.
How many tragedies, even in our world of modern innovation, spring from that same root, from dismissed information or abandoned responsibility?
And that brings us to a final provocative thought. The creature's last act is to intentionally destroy his own body. He wants to annihilate the forbidden, world-altering knowledge that he represents, to make sure no one can study his miserable frame.
So was the final, most complete destruction Victor caused not the creature's murders, but the ultimate erasure of the very scientific knowledge he worked so hard to attain?
Something to think about as you navigate your own projects. Remembering that every new beginning, especially an innovative one, always comes with a price tag.